started with an uneasy silence. Meghan Markle had agreed to appear on The View for a segment titled Modern Monarchy and Media, a discussion panel meant to address public scrutiny, tabloid culture, and life after the royal exit. She had been hesitant, but her team convinced her this was a prime chance to reset the narrative, especially after months of controversy surrounding her new lifestyle brand. She expected heated questions, yes, maybe a touch of skepticism, but nothing could have prepared her for what walked on stage mid-show. The audience gasped. It was Howard Stern, unannounced, uninvited, but somehow approved by producers for a surprise debate moment. "Let's have some real talk," he growled as he took his seat beside Whoopi, instantly dwarfing the energy at the table. Meghan's expression faltered just slightly, the corners of her smile twitching. The producers whispered into earpieces. Joy Behar looked visibly uncomfortable, but the cameras kept rolling. Howard didn't ease into it. "You talk about being silenced," he said bluntly, leaning toward Meghan. "But every time I turn on the TV, I hear your voice. Books, interviews, documentaries. What exactly are you being silenced from?" The studio fell into a tension so thick it could slice glass. Meghan responded carefully at first, explaining that having a voice didn't mean being heard fairly. But Stern interrupted. No, you want control, not freedom. You want to dictate how people react to you." Whoopi tried to mediate, but Stern doubled down. "You married into royalty and then cashed out. People feel conned." The word hung in the air like a slap. Meghan's eyes narrowed. "No one cashed out," she said, her voice sharp but measured. "We left for our mental health, for our safety." Stern smirked and then signed with Netflix, Spotify, Penguin Random House, all while saying, "You want privacy? Do you hear yourself?" Meghan looked to the other hosts, but none interjected. In that moment, she wasn't the guest, she was the target. What followed was not just a clash, but a philosophical collision. Meghan, her jaw tight, began to speak from the gut. "Wanting to own your story isn't the same as wanting to hide," she said. "If someone takes your photo without consent and then sells a lie with it, correcting that isn't hypocrisy, it's survival." The audience murmured. "Then why not do what normal people do? Sue and move on." Why the documentaries, the Spotify deals, the titles? You want the benefits of royalty without the responsibility. Meghan's tone dropped an octave. "I gave birth under the threat of death. I lived in a palace with panic attacks, locked doors, and no keys. You think I wanted that? There it was. The trauma, the unhealed burn." The audience, now divided, sat stiff in their seats. Sunny Hostin shifted uneasily. Sarah N. glanced toward the teleprompter. The director in the booth reportedly begged to cut to commercial. The control room was in chaos. But the drama was too potent. The segment continued online. The clash exploded instantly. Clips hit social media within minutes. One tweet from a verified user read, "Howard Stern just said what the world's been thinking for years, and Meghan couldn't handle it." Another countered, "Stern ambushed a trauma survivor for ratings. Disgusting." Within an hour, #Stern vs Meghan trended across platforms. ABC's YouTube stream received over 1 million views in record time. The View's official statement came just 2 hours later. Today's segment reflected raw, unscripted discourse. "We stand by all voices at our table." But behind the scenes, producers panicked. Advertisers called, executives debated suspensions. Meghan's team issued no comment, not yet. But insiders said she left the studio shaken, refusing all post-show press, and Stern. He walked out grinning. "That went better than I thought," he reportedly told paparazzi outside. "I didn't even need to go hard. It was a battle of image versus rawness, and no one knew yet who had won." The fallout was immediate and global. British tabloids called it the American meltdown, while American outlets questioned whether ambush journalism had gone too far. Meghan canceled 2 upcoming appearances and remained out of sight for over a week. Harry was seen solo at an environmental gala in Oslo, looking tense. Meanwhile, Stern launched his own podcast episode titled Royal Flush, where he doubled down, accusing Meghan of weaponizing trauma for profit. But something unexpected happened. The clip of Meghan saying, "I gave birth under the threat of death began gaining traction. Mental health advocates rallied behind her. Celebrities posted in solidarity: Viola Davis, Mindy Kaling, even Taylor Swift. The discourse began to shift. Maybe she had been ambushed. Maybe Stern had crossed a line. The pendulum of public sympathy started swinging. Meghan, watching it all unfold from her Montecito estate, stayed silent. But the world buzzed without her asterisk. Then came the bombshell. A leaked email thread between Stern's team and the View producers surfaced. It showed that the surprise wasn't entirely unplanned. Meghan's camp had asked for no confrontational guest producers, however, fearing a ratings dip, invited Stern as a wild card anyway. The emails revealed a chilling line from a producer. "Let her sweat. It'll make great TV." The backlash was swift and brutal. Fans and celebrities alike turned on The View. The hashtag boycott, The View surged. Sponsors quietly pulled out. Joy and Whoopi reportedly threatened to walk unless the show apologized. Meghan's attorney sent a formal complaint to ABC. For once, Stern said nothing. And Meghan, she returned to Instagram not with a statement, but with a black and white photo of herself holding her daughter's hand. The caption read, "Only still here, still healing." It broke 1 million likes in 2 hours. ABC scrambled. A special primetime episode was announced. The Reckoning, When Media Goes Too Far. Hosted by Robin Roberts, featuring media experts, psychologists, and a pre-recorded message from Meghan herself. In it, she calmly detailed how it felt to be cornered for sport. "You can't protect your children from what you pretend isn't hurting you," she said. It was chilling, it was graceful, and it was viral. Even Stern's fiercest fans had to admit the game had changed. The episode ended with Robin turning to camera and asking, "At what point do we admit that entertainment at someone's expense isn't bold, it's broken?" That line became a cultural moment. College professors cited it. Podcasts dissected it. A reckoning had begun, and this time, the public wasn't laughing. But Meghan didn't linger in victory. A month later, she announced a bold new initiative, Safe Space Media, a platform for women and marginalized voices to share their stories without fear of exploitation. Backed by high-profile investors and endorsed by major stars, it became an overnight success. Meghan didn't center herself in it. She acted more like a curator, giving others the spotlight. She refused interviews. She declined award show invites. Her silence became her statement. Meanwhile, The View floundered. Ratings plummeted. Joy Behar quietly retired. Whoopi took a leave of absence. The producers responsible for the Stern stunt were dismissed. Stern, despite doubling down on his show, watched his own ratings slide. His shock value tactics began to feel outdated in a world that was rapidly evolving beyond cruelty as currency. Months passed. Then, in a full-circle moment, Meghan appeared in a surprise TED Talk titled "The Cost of the Mic." She didn't reference Howard, she didn't mention The View, but her words resonated deeper than ever. If your story needs to be shouted, that's not because it's weak, it's because someone tried to silence it. She stood alone on that stage, dressed simply, no tears, no drama, just truth. The video broke records, and Howard, watching from his studio, reportedly muttered, "She played the long game," and he was right. Meghan had not only survived, she had transcended. Not by fighting louder, but by refusing to fight on their terms. It had been 3 months since the firestorm on The View, and Howard Stern hadn't apologized. Not once. He leaned harder into his persona. America's last truth-teller, as his fans called him. Every radio episode brought a fresh jab at Meghan, mocking her interviews, her past, even her childhood. But the climate was changing, and something he didn't account for was the quiet, simmering power of political pressure. Senators, including Elizabeth Warren and Cory Booker, began referencing the Meghan Stern debacle in hearings about media ethics and digital harassment. "We cannot let public figures be torn apart under the banner of entertainment," Warren stated. Newsrooms took notice. The FCC opened a quiet investigation into possible defamation and broadcast manipulation. Meghan herself hadn't said Stern's name publicly since The View, but she didn't need to. A movement had grown around her silence. That's when Stern's sponsors began to pull out. First, a major coffee brand, then to national retail chains. "We cannot align with content that undermines mental health advocacy," one statement read. Stern's team laughed it off at first, but revenue reports told an untouchable dot in the middle of the chaos. Meghan gave one rare interview, not to a journalist, but to a trauma counselor for Safe Space Media's new podcast. It was raw, quiet, and devastating. She described waking up in cold sweats after the view, reliving how her voice cracked while defending her life. "I wasn't trying to win an argument," she said. "I was trying not to unravel on live TV." Millions listened, and this time, even some of her most vocal critics began to reconsider. A petition to remove Stern from primetime slots